Nicola Sturgeon has admitted that the SNP could launch their latest Scottish independence bid as early as next year as she seeks to rebuild Scotland. The SNP leader was quizzed on her plans to hold a second Scottish referendum in the autumn following the parliamentary election in May 2021. Ms. Sturgeon stated that she wanted the referendum to take place in the early part of the new Scottish Parliament's term. Sky's Kay Burley said, "Could we see India too in the autumn? You are saying you would like to see it in the early part of the next term of the Scottish Parliament." Ms. Sturgeon replied, "Yes, I want to see it in the early part of the next term of the Scottish Parliament rather than the later part. I think as we rebuild from COVID it is really important that we have all of the tools and powers to do that properly. And that the country we are rebuilding is one that the majority of Scots want to see, not one in the image of Boris Johnson and his band of Brexiteers." Scotland's First Minister continued, "I am not going to go further and put a precise date on that right now for the very reasons we have been talking about. We are still like most countries around the world in a global pandemic. There are lots of uncertainties ahead of us right now. We do not know exactly when the end of the pandemic will be. I think it is really important for Scotland, the polls would suggest the majority of people agree with me, that we equip ourselves with the powers to rebuild from COVID in a way the majority of people that live here want to see." On Thursday during an interview with the BBC's Sarah Smith, Nicola Sturgeon outlined a timetable for the second referendum on Scottish independence. Ms. Sturgeon said, "I think it's right, not least because of the challenges this country is facing coming out and rebuilding from COVID, that Scotland should have the opportunity to choose whether to become independent in the earlier rather than the latter part of the next parliament. I think the referendum should, for a whole variety of reasons, be in the earlier part of the next parliament. I intend to say more about this before the election in our manifesto, but we are still in a global pandemic that I feel a bit more hopeful about seeing the end of than I did even just a couple of months ago. There's still a lot of uncertainty ahead. I am a lifelong believer and campaigner and advocate for independence, but right now I am also the First Minister of Scotland. My responsibility is to the health and well-being of the country and trying to steer it through a pandemic, and I am very focused on that." She added, "If the people in Scotland vote for a referendum, there will be a referendum.